It all started with a survey line and a smirk. An innocent-looking red flag poked into the dirt at the edge of my ranch, marking territory that had been in my family for generations, long before anyone uttered the words homeowners association. I should have known something was wrong when I saw a construction crew tearing down mesquite trees and dragging concrete pipes across land I had just fenced off a month prior. My great-grandfather carved this land from wilderness, and over 100 years later, I was the last Merrill left on the deed. But here they were, subcontractors in orange vests unloading PVC plumbing and hammering in stakes with no permits I ever signed. I walked over, boots dusty from cattle herding, and asked the foreman what he thought he was doing. "We've got full authorization from the HOA," he replied without a hint of doubt. I blinked. "There's no HOA here," I said slowly, and that's when I first heard the name that would define the coming war. Karen L. Fitzroy, president of the West Ridge Estates HOA. Apparently, she had submitted documentation to the county that said the land she was building on had been sold by the previous owner and legally annexed into their growing community development. There was only one problem. I never sold a damn thing. She had somehow acquired forged documents from a real estate scammer who listed my land as abandoned, probably banking on the fact that I lived deep on the property and hadn't updated the old fence line in decades. I stormed into the county records office, and sure enough, there were new entries filed under the name of a Shell LLC that supposedly sold 60 acres of my land to a development company called Fitzroy Holdings, a company Karen herself owned. The twist? All of this had been done while I was hospitalized for a back injury and out of contact for weeks. They thought I was old, out of the way, and probably not coming back. Big mistake. The first thing I did was hire a surveyor, one of the best in the state, and I had them pull every deed, plat, and boundary record going back 75 years. We built a case thick as a phone book, cross-referenced with aerial maps, GPS coordinates, and signatures verified by handwriting experts. It didn't take long to unravel the fraud. The original fake transaction? It wasn't even notarized correctly. Worse, it had my grandfather's signature on a 2023 date. He'd been dead since 2009. I brought all this to the sheriff, who looked overwhelmed. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Dead sure," I replied, slapping the original deed onto his desk. That was when I learned that Karen wasn't just some HOA president. She had friends on the county board, connections in zoning, and had convinced a few greedy realtors to look the other way. But they didn't count on me pushing back. While Karen paraded around in golf carts through her shiny new development, welcoming new homeowners with fake smiles and community pride, I was building a legal arsenal. The houses were going up fast, model homes, sidewalks, even a community center. Within 4 months, there were 98 units either sold or under contract. I'd drive past every day, counting each one like a chess piece moved illegally across my board. My lawyer warned me. They're trying to bury you under momentum. Once families move in, it becomes harder to reverse. But I had something better than urgency. I had title. Clear, undeniable, legal title. And I was about to wield it like a wrecking ball. I sent Karen a certified letter informing her that every structure on the west half of West Ridge Estates stood on land I owned and never consented to transfer. Her response? A cease and desist order against me, claiming I was trespassing on HOA property. I laughed so hard, I almost stapled the notice to a steer. What followed was a legal standoff. She hired lawyers, I hired better ones. She produced doctored maps, I submitted satellite imagery with timestamps. She claimed squatters' rights, I filed an ejectment suit. And while the courts churned slowly through my filings, I made a quieter move. I began notifying the banks. Every mortgage lender tied to one of those 98 homes received a package from me, a formal notice of title dispute, a copy of the property deed, and a sworn affidavit that their collateral sat on land they had no legal right to. Within weeks, panic set in. Loans were flagged. Closings halted. Title insurance companies went silent. And still, Karen kept pushing, telling residents it was a clerical error, that I was just a bitter old landowner trying to extort money. She didn't know that my next move was already in play, filing a quiet title action that would demand full judicial review of the fraudulent transfers and trigger a chain reaction across every title tied to her development. Then came the media. I leaked the full story to a friend who worked in local news. The headline hit like a thunderclap. 98 homes built on stolen land? Local HOA president under fire. The HOA board tried to contain the damage, issuing a statement that all legal procedures were followed, but they had no idea how deep I dug. I even uncovered emails between Karen and her development partner that showed they were aware of the title problems, but continued building before the window closed. That phrase alone became a legal noose around their necks. By the time depositions were scheduled, 5 homeowners had already sued the HOA for fraud. Another 6 walked away from contracts entirely. The development ground to a halt. Construction crews disappeared overnight. And yet, Karen still hadn't faced me. Not until one day, she showed up at my gate in a pearl white Lexus, wearing oversized sunglasses and an attitude. "We need to talk," she said. I opened the gate slowly and let her walk up the gravel path to my porch. She tried to offer a settlement, an insultingly low amount for easement rights. I laughed in her face. "You built 98 homes on my land without permission," I said. "You're not getting an easement, you're getting evicted." She called me a relic, a fossil clinging to outdated land laws. I told her I was about to become the most expensive mistake she ever made. The sun was setting behind her, and I could see her facade start to crack. That was the first time she realized I wasn't bluffing. I was loading the hammer, and the nail was already in. The legal process was slow, but momentum was now mine. The county's internal affairs team opened a review of how the land records had been altered. Karen's connections started abandoning her. I had neighbors I'd never met showing up at my ranch offering support, asking how they could help. That was when I knew I wasn't just defending my land anymore. I was setting fire to a lie built on concrete and property lines, and I was just getting started. If Section 1 had been the buildup, the steady rise before the drop, then Section 2 was the free fall, the point where everything unraveled for Karen and her empire built on arrogance and fraud. The courts finally moved. My quiet title action reached a hearing, and the evidence I'd compiled was overwhelming, even for a judge seasoned by decades of boundary disputes and shady developers. The courtroom was packed that day, not just with lawyers and clerks, but with frightened homeowners who had started to hear whispers about how their mortgages were about to become worthless. The judge didn't need hours. 30 minutes in, he issued a temporary injunction halting all further development on the disputed land and scheduling a full evidentiary hearing. Karen, flanked by her legal team in tailored suits, looked like she had eaten a lemon hole. Her lawyer's argument rested on adverse possession and community benefit, but the judge slammed both down. "You cannot claim ownership by building on land that you never had legal title to in the first place," he said sharply. From there, the fallout came fast. Real estate agents stopped showing the homes. Contractors filed liens for unpaid work. And the HOA members, those who had once clapped politely at Karen's speeches about vision and growth, began turning on her. They showed up at meetings with pitchforks, metaphorical and otherwise, demanding to know how their dream homes had been built on a lie. Karen tried to claim she was misled by the developer, that she had acted in good faith, but her email said otherwise. I had printed every one, highlighted the key phrases, and had them read aloud in court. "Just keep building. Merrill's probably dead anyway." That one got an audible gasp from the back row. The judge ordered Karen and the HOA to submit a detailed accounting of every transaction, document, and meeting related to the land acquisition. Turns out there were side deals, backdoor bonuses, and forged signatures everywhere. I started receiving calls from lawyers representing individual homeowners, asking if I would consider selling parcels back to the residents at fair value to help them recover their investment. I told them all the same thing: talk to your HOA. They built on stolen dirt. The pressure mounted. Several HOA board members resigned. Karen became a pariah, dodging reporters and hiding behind closed blinds. But it wasn't enough for me to just prove my ownership. I wanted justice, and not the symbolic kind. I filed a lawsuit for damages, trespassing, fraud, destruction of private property, and emotional distress. The courts approved it for trial. The sum? Just shy of $14.2 million. That number wasn't random. It was the estimated profit Karen made from the homes sold on my land. I wasn't just coming for her HOA. I was coming for everything she touched. And then came the sheriff's office with a court order in hand. Accompanied by county officials and an independent surveyor, they arrived at the development with a full eviction and demolition notice, signed and sealed by a superior court judge. Karen tried to stop them, standing in front of a bulldozer in her pastel pantsuit like she was Rosa Parks, but they escorted her off the property in front of cameras from 3 local news channels. Her face was plastered across the evening broadcast with headlines like HOA president evicted from her own community. But the most satisfying part? Watching the first excavator tear through the wall of the community center she had built to host her wine tastings and book clubs. Families stood outside, some crying, others just stunned. I didn't celebrate that part. Those people were collateral damage in Karen's ego trip, but I wasn't about to back down either. My lawyer arranged mediation sessions for homeowners who wanted to negotiate legitimate leases or buy the land properly. About a third accepted and worked out deals. The rest packed up and left, angry at Karen, at the HOA, and at a system that had let them down. But I didn't stop there. With the court's ruling in hand, I contacted state regulators about Karen's business practices. Turns out she wasn't just unethical, she was criminal. Within weeks, she was under investigation for wire fraud, tax evasion, and submitting false documents to a public agency. The IRS got involved. Her assets were frozen. Her Lexus? Repossessed. Her house? Raided. The woman who once lectured me about progress and civic responsibility was now a headline in a federal indictment. Her HOA was disbanded. The development was officially dissolved. County maps were redrawn to remove all traces of West Ridge Estates. The name was scrubbed from the records like it had never existed. And me? I started building again, this time on my own terms. I built a fence, taller, stronger, with security cameras every 20 feet. I even repurposed some of the demolished home materials to build new barns and storage sheds. Waste not, want not. The land was finally mine again, in deed and in peace. But I kept one thing as a reminder, a piece of Karen's custom OA welcome sign. It now hangs above my workshop, next to my grandfather's tools. West Ridge Estates, a community for the future. I scratched out estates and carved in warnings. Because what Karen didn't understand, what most people don't, is that land isn't just dirt. It's legacy. It's memory. It's blood and sweat and stories told at dusk under fading skies. She built 98 homes on my past, thinking I wouldn't fight for it. She thought because she had a clipboard and a committee and some connections that she could steamroll me like one of her developments. But I wasn't just some grumpy landowner. I was the wall she didn't see coming. And when she hit me, I hit back with history, title, law, and the full force of every stubborn, proud marrow who came before me. In the end, I didn't just get my land back. I got vindication, closure, and a legend that will outlive every slab of concrete she laid. And every time I ride past that reclaimed field, I smile, because the soil knows, the land remembers, and I made damn sure it would never forget. What followed next was a long, meticulous game of chess in which I made every move count, and Karen's HOA empire toppled like a house of cards collapsing under its own arrogance. After the judge's temporary injunction was granted and the initial cease and desist orders had been delivered, I did not slow down. I brought in a land surveyor, drones, and an environmental impact specialist, all of whom created irrefutable documentation that the entire 98-home subdivision had been built squarely within the borders of my legally titled and fully documented property. Karen and her cronies still tried to maintain the illusion of control, plastering community boards with messages claiming the judge was on my payroll and I was a squatter with a grudge, but the tide was turning fast and panic was setting in. The families who had bought homes from her precious HOA were starting to realize the depth of the problem, especially when their mortgage lenders began calling with alarming updates. See, I had quietly filed legal notice not just with the court, but with the county clerk's office, which meant the titles to every single home were now legally disputed. That caused a chain reaction. Insurance companies backed out, banks suspended loans, and real estate appraisers downgraded property values to near zero until the ownership conflict was resolved. Overnight, the HOA's precious development turned from a hot investment into a liability pit. And the best part? None of them knew what was coming next. I wasn't just looking for restitution. I was out to dismantle every brick of this fraudulent operation. I hired an attorney who specialized in land reclamation cases. With her help, we filed a full quiet title action demanding that every square foot of my property be returned to my sole ownership and that all occupants vacate until a legal resolution was achieved. That sent the HOA into pure meltdown. Karen appeared on local news outlets attempting to smear my name, standing in front of the HOA clubhouse with crocodile tears, claiming she was being bullied by a greedy man trying to destroy a peaceful neighborhood. It might have played well to cameras, but the documents didn't lie. I had the original deeds, boundary maps, tax records, and court rulings to prove my claim. During a live town hall streamed by a concerned residents group, I showed up with those documents in hand and read every line of my legal titles, pausing at the clause that stated, "The owner shall maintain full and unrestricted control over ingress, egress, development, and leasing of the property, with no recorded easements, subdivisions, or rights granted to third parties without express written consent." You could have heard a pin drop. One woman in the crowd broke into tears. A man angrily asked Karen if she had ever even checked the title. That was the beginning of the end. The HOA's lawyer tried to argue the homes were built in good faith, but that defense doesn't hold water when your permits are forged, your deeds are counterfeit, and you knowingly built over someone else's land. In the courtroom, my attorney laid out a timeline of fraud so detailed and damning that even the judge seemed visibly angry. Karen, red-faced and trembling, sat in silence as the verdict was delivered. The development was illegal, the homes were trespassing structures, and I was entitled not only to damages but to full authority to evict, demolish, or reclaim at my discretion. Oh, and the cherry on top? The court found that Karen had personally profited millions through under-the-table deals, kickbacks from contractors, and inflated HOA fees. The judge ordered her assets frozen and referred her case for criminal investigation. I didn't gloat yet. Instead, I gave every homeowner a simple offer: either purchase a lease from me under new terms that included proper zoning, infrastructure maintenance, and rent paid directly to me, or vacate within 90 days. About 70% agreed, especially after I dropped HOA dues to zero and banned Karen and her board from setting foot on the land. The remaining 30% fought back, some citing emotional investment, others blindly loyal to the fantasy Karen had sold them, but the court orders were final. One by one, those houses were vacated. I repurposed several into vacation rentals and partnered with a legitimate property management company. Others, I auctioned off. The clubhouse became a community center named after my late father, who had once told me never to let anyone steal what you've worked for. And Karen? She ended up being indicted on multiple felony charges: fraud, forgery, racketeering, and criminal trespass. Her mugshot went viral. The HOA was dissolved, its bank accounts seized, its reputation shattered. Local news dubbed it the Karen subdivision collapse, and I'll admit, I had the headline framed. But beyond the revenge, the money, or the vindication, what mattered most was that I stood my ground. They thought I was just some landowner they could walk all over, one title among many. What they didn't realize was that I was the foundation under everything they had built. And when that foundation pushed back, everything came crashing down. So now when people ask what happened to that shady HOA and the woman who built 98 homes on stolen soil, I just smile and say they should have read the fine print. Because every inch they were standing on was mine.